What's up, Aniss? وش رايك?
Ça va et toi?
I'm very, very good. So you're here to promote your new book.
And to see you.
Yes, could you show it to the camera?
There you go.
Flowers of Aniss.
Yeah.
So, to the few who perceive the other realm, the spiritual guide for those, for the lost spiritual soul. All right. So, give it to me. This is food for thought. For the few who perceive the other realm. So, you mean that it's not for everybody?
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
Explain to me, who is it for? Who is this book for? Who should buy it?
Just, can I read the description?
Of course. Go ahead.
So, the mystical Algiers is pregnant, deflowered with might, sanctified and bright. The flower of Aniss is at your sight. Now, this grimoire speaks from the heart of the hearts to a million soul cursed and doomed in seeing what is beyond the social norms and conformity. This is a spiritual guide for the bright spiritual lad in quest of a path to enlighten his soul. A grimoire full of revelations without exaggerations, written through a scientific approach and an academic language, simple and candid for the intuitive soul to grasp in.
All right. So I have a few questions. As someone who would find this book in the library, is it already available?
Not yet, no.
When is it
will be
going to be?
available next month.
Next month. Okay. So I guess October.
10th of October.
10th
yes.
of October is going to be available. So suppose I'm in the library, I'm going to read this, and I'm going to give you like my honest thought processes
Okay.
of me reading this. So the mystical Algiers is pregnant. First of all, I'm not much of a poet, so it's very difficult for me to understand
So by saying the
the
mystical
analogy.
Algiers,
Is this an analogy?
no, it's an allegory. The mystical Algiers is a reference to the other books, Sons, Sins, and Seeds of Algiers.
Okay.
So this book brings up the metaphysical knowledge that was displayed in the trilogy
Yes.
and casts it in an academic language, not poetry or something adequate.
What do you mean by academic language? So this is like, it's not poetry, it's text.
It's
paragraphs.
It's objective, it's academic, it's...
It is.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you mean it's objective? Like what does it talk about?
Well, it defines spirituality, defines concepts that are adequate to spirituality through an academic approach, which means that we follow deductive reasoning. When you read poetry, you follow an inductive reasoning. It means you read things and you interpret them subjectively. But a deductive reasoning is based on, in literature, is based on quotations, much similar to the scientific method. This is the method that we use in the English department and academical research.
Okay, so you use, so this is gonna be, what is the purpose? Is this like a research work?
It is slightly a research work.
What is the purpose? What do you intend to find? What are the discoveries that you're gonna make by reading this?
So it was inspired by my master thesis, and I came up with several conclusions. So I displayed some of these conclusions in this book.
Could you tell me about your master's thesis?
Yes, it was entitled "The Pantheism of Edgar Allan Poe and its Symbiotic Relationship with the Occult."
Okay.
So it's an approach that analyzes the works of Edgar Allan Poe, and I introduced immodestly a spiritual progression for a person to progress in the spiritual hierarchy. The first thing is to have an ego death that was symbolized by the fall of the house of Usher. The second thing is to get in touch with mysticism or spirituality or anything that is from the inspirational world. And through my thesis, I came up with the conclusion that once you are aware about this knowledge, once you come in contact with it, you cannot go backwards. You cannot go to your old self. So this is like the second step.
Yeah.
And the third step is discovering your potential, discovering what are your prowess? And for Edgar Allan Poe, it was poetry. That is why I added the chapter of the power of words and manifestation in the book.
I see. You see, when you talk about a certain knowledge, that when you discover it, you can't go back. I don't think I'm acquainted with that kind of knowledge. Like, it's very difficult for me personally to understand how, like, what do you mean by for the few who perceive the other realm? Well, what if I'm not one of the few, and what if I decide that I want to be one of the few? How would I be able to perceive this other realm?
Well, the other realm is not simply spirituality. I believe that there is the material world and the spiritual world.
Okay.
They both complete each other. So the spiritual world is in the material world. Just like with the universe, there is dark matter. 19% of the universe is made of dark matter. So you can see it as the spiritual world, because there are like electromagnetics that links the planets with each other.
Yeah.
To come back to you, I asked you about the meaning of the painting, subjective meaning, and you came up to me with that. Materially, it is seen as an object of art. It is categorized, it is labelized, but spiritually, you come up with a different conclusion. An effect, unity of effect cast on the perceiver.
Okay, so is it like this realm that you're talking about, the spiritual realm? This is what you call it?
Poetically, yes, but academically, it's called metaphysics.
Metaphysics, okay. So this metaphysic or metaphysical realm, is it like beauty? Like it exists in somebody's head?
Well, according to Edgar Allan Poe, yes, it is beauty, but according to the academic philosophers, it is simply a stream of thoughts, no different than any other field of study.
It's not different. Okay, I understand that you can study it and do research about it, but is it something that really exists, or is it something that is in our head? It exists in our head, like beauty, for example. It's not well. Another example would be the color red. You like the color red, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it doesn't exist, except in our heads. Like the color red is just waves of electromagnetic waves. It's like a frequency of electromagnetic waves, like in the physical world, like in reality, in like what is out there. What we receive is just a certain frequency of electromagnetic waves that our brain interprets as red, and we experience red. Matter of fact, it could be that your red and my red are completely different.
Yeah, I've heard about this too.
Yes, and there are no ways to prove or to compare the two, because we can't like link our brains together like physically. So is this spiritual realm the same way? Is this the same thing? Like somebody could go to Algiers and not experience this spiritual realm at all, because he's not able to see...
because it is subjective, because reality is subjective. Like we attract what we think about. For example, if you want to think that a room is a cell, you'll start feeling that it is a cell, and you'll start finding all the logical arguments to define this as a cell.
That's true.
But if you defined it as a, let's say, an enlightening cave, you will see it as such.
Yes.
Because the spiritual realm is subjective.
I see. I understand, yes. Do you think we can control that?
It depends.
I
personally believe that we can control it.
Yeah.
But according to the book, I couldn't put my personal opinion. I just used Stoicism. I made a whole chapter about Stoicism to define that we cannot control the external world, but we can control ourselves.
I see. Are you sure we cannot control? Like, it's a very seductive idea, the thing that you could control the way you perceive things. Because, say, someday you'll find yourself in a prison cell, right? And then you would realize that you would have like, I don't know, maybe 20 years ahead of you, just in that prison cell. What are you gonna do?
you can control yourself, how you will perceive that present self. By saying you can control yourself in Stoicism is controlling your perception of reality, and therefore applying your own subjective approach that is relevant to your own situation. But the world is in a constant change, and you cannot fully control this change, but only to go with the flow.
Okay. So I've seen some people, like I know of some people that have, like, to me, as far as I'm concerned, what I thought was that they were actually swimming against the flow.
Yeah.
And at some point they kind of changed their own reality. One of them is actually, I have to find his name, but one of them is an inmate who was sentenced for life in prison because he was accused of murder, and he didn't murder anyone. So he spent 15 years in prison, and at the end of the 15 years he was able to prove himself innocent. So this is a man who went to prison without any
convictions,
any good defense. Like the lawyer that he had was himself persuaded that he committed the murder. So he spent 15 years actually studying law and then defending himself and writing to as many judges as possible. And then he was able to actually prove himself not guilty. And he was freed.
It's a beautiful story.
It is a very beautiful story, and I guess this guy could have decided, on the one hand, that okay, I'm in prison, I'm gonna spend my life here. What if this is, I don't know, like, what if this is a school?
Yeah.
I guess it could become a school, because he's gonna, and it was a school for him. Like he spent years and years studying law, and he became actually a lawyer just out of his studies in prison. Yeah. So, but at the same time, he actually went against the flow. He pushed back, and he found he was met with a lot of resistance, because some people were profiting out of him being in prison. Like some police officers became detectives because they caught him. So their careers would be over if somebody realizes that they caught the wrong guy. So yeah, I guess this is something that is very relevant to our time. I see a lot of foreigners who come to Algeria, and they'd be like, "Ooh, what a beautiful country! I want to stay here." But at the same time, I see a lot of Algerians, and what they say like, "Roma, I wanna get out of here. This is like a prison, ciel ouvert." See what I mean? Yeah. So is this a matter of perception, or does this have basis in reality according to you?
It is a matter of perception first, and it is true that staying in Algeria in general is difficult, but building in here will make you stronger. So when you go abroad, you will handle things swiftly.
I see. Yeah. Okay. So, what the other thing I'm really interested in is your scientific approach. So you say here, this is a spiritual guide for the bright spiritual lad in quest for a path to enlighten his soul.
Yes.
Right. A grimoire full of revelations without exaggerations, written through a scientific approach. So, how does this scientific approach help you to write about spiritual guidance?
Well, it's very easy actually. You will find by doing researches that everyone uses a scientific approach, and scientific approach in literary researches is based on quotations. It's based on quotations.
So to you, the scientific approach is just quotations?
Quotations by men who are experts in that domain that you are tackling.
But what gives these men legitimacy in being experts?
Well, their contributions to philosophy and that fields of domain. For example, I quoted Ar-Rumi, I quoted Descartes, Aaron Apk, Alan Watts, Sadhguru, and all the spiritual figures.
Okay. So how is this similar to the scientific approach that we use, for example, to discover planets such as these that go around double stars, etc.? So, or maybe the scientific approach that we use in discovering viruses in biology or things like that. So is it similar? Is it the same scientific approach?
Not very much the same, but inspired from it, because it's not built on material facts, but rather quotations, as I said. It's a deductive reasoning. So you got the quote, you prove first, you put your arguments, and then you use the quote, you analyze the quote, you evaluate it, and you use it to prove your arguments again. And it's not just one process. For example, for my master thesis, we had to write 25,000 words. 6,000 words had to be quotations, so you know, and the rest were just analysis and evaluations.
How did they decide that 6,000 words had to be quotations, not 3,000, not 10,000?
You're gonna have to ask the English department. As far as I know, that's how they use it in all countries. The English department, that's the curriculum.
Yeah, that's kind of weird to me.
Huh?
That's kind of weird to me. It's like there shouldn't be a rule here, should there?
In academical analysis?
No, I mean in terms of the size of quotations inside your content.
It's actually very fair. Yeah, 6,000.
It is fair.
Yeah,
you think?
25,000. Yeah, it's more or less.
Shouldn't it be like more about objective reasoning rather than the number of quotes? What if 25 quotes is enough for you?
No, actually 6,000 words of quotation is just the quotation. The rest are evaluation, analysis.
Yeah, what if you spend like 25,000 words on analysis, and you're just analyzing like 500 words of quotations? Is that wrong?
That wouldn't be coherent, no.
How so?
Because that's not how master theses have been based in ages, no.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I come from a scientific department, and there is no limit, minimum or maximum, to the amount of experiments or the amount of quotations from other experiments that have been done or conclusions that have been arrived to by other researchers. Like, if you say something, it has to be either based on reality that you experienced or that you experimented on, or like you have results, experience results, or it has to be based on someone else's experience.
Okay.
So, like, it's not about the size of the words. Also, there's a thing, like, I've been using Twitter lately, and sometimes I would write something and on Twitter, and it's too long for a tweet. So I have to keep the same thing, like I have to keep saying the same thing, but by using fewer words. And I realized that a lot of the words that I've been using are just like really unnecessary. Like, for example, instead of saying the book of Aniss, that's 3 words, I say Aniss's book, which is 2 words. This on scale, like, it adds up to like a lot of words that you can take out from text. So I wonder if this is a good like measure of the eligibility of research work.
You mean in academical research?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do your own research and follow your own methodology. But if you want your research to contribute to human growth, it will have to be supervised and analyzed by doctors of the departments, of any department, whether it's scientific and stuff. And in order for them to evaluate it coherently, the academical approach has to be present. This is very helpful. So if you have an idea, you can prove it easily through an academical approach, rather than just speak it out loud, just because you feel like it.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I still don't understand the relevancy of the number of words.
Well, because in literature it's about words. It's the art of
Is it
writing.
about the number of words or what the words say?
Of course, the what the words contain and
Yeah.
the number as well.
Really?
Yeah, but like in 25,000, 5,000 is merely 2 pages, so that's like almost 25 quotes.
Yeah. So what if you have like only 5,000 quotes? You would add 1,000 that may not be as relevant as they should be, but that's gonna be okay because that's 6,000 quotes for you.
Well, for my book, I didn't follow
I
this
know you
methodology.
wouldn't.
Yes,
But I'm sure that a lot of people would do this. Like I would have done that.
Mhm.
Like what if I had only 5,000 quotes and the subject is not something that is, for example, what if you write about something that is not very well studied?
Mhm.
Like for example, there are some subjects that are kind of dark, like dark magic
Yeah.
in the Islamic
occultism.
world. Yeah.
That's the title. Yeah, Islamic occultism.
Yeah,
It exists.
so this is not a subject that have been
Mhm.
written about extensively.
Mhm.
It's gonna be very difficult for you, maybe. So this is the only subject that I've been that I could come up with right now. But this could be very more difficult for you to find 6,000 quotes about.
Mhm.
So if you have 25,000 stuff, like 25,000 words to write about this, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to cancel the research because you're not gonna have.
Academically, there are rules.
Yeah.
Yes, but
They are
independently,
bendable.
you can use any quotes that you want. And to be honest, I didn't even calculate the number of quotes that I used.
Yeah.
But I focused on the quality of the quotes
Yes,
and the
yes,
evaluations.
yes.
So
Yes.
it's up to you to send a message.
Mm.
You use a reader-writer approach to know how the reader would react to this, how he would grasp the informations. So in literature, it's relevant to you.
Yes.
But
yes.
in our department and any other department, there are rules. Yes.
Yeah. What? How much do you think? So could you tell me about the content of the book?
Yeah, you can.
Like, what can I expect? Like, I can't read it. I can't read all of it right now.
you
but
can check
what
the
should I-
content pages. It's on the beginning.
Let's do this. All right. So we've got chapter 1, inner words. What is spirituality? Yeah, that's a really, really good question to tackle. Yeah, very, very interesting. Oneness and pantheism. Okay. Birth chart and life path. So what is birth chart? Is it like something related to astrology?
Yes, that is correct.
Do you think astrology is... Sorry. Climatisant. But do you think, like, is it relevant to our lives? Like a lot of people...
You mean,
for example,
is it important?
Well, a lot of people, for example, when they first meet me, they'd be like, what's your astrology sign?
What is it?
I don't think that's relevant, but
Yeah,
I
but
could
can I know?
tell you. Yeah, that's Gemini.
Okay.
Right. You knew it. Yeah, but that's like because to me it's incredible that that such a thing that is taken seriously by people, like especially astrology. Like I understand the lore and the beauty of it. Like of course it's really, really beautiful.
Aesthetic.
Yeah, it's an aesthetic thing. It could even be an artistic thing. You could like the same way a name affects could affect your personality and the way you are perceived by by other people. I guess being Gemini could affect your personality and it could affect the way you are perceived by other people. But is really the position of stars in the sky, the moment you were born, is important to the way you're gonna live, or the kind of life you're gonna have, or the kind of personality you're gonna... Do you really think that?
Importance.
As a researcher, I'm
Okay.
asking you, like... Yes.
Well, actually, before the birth chart and the life path comes the chapter of oneness and pantheism. What is oneness? What is pantheism?
Yes.
Oneness is a theological concept much inspired from Islam by the enlightened people of the 18th century.
Okay.
It is true that they stole a lot from Islam and applied it to the world.
Yeah.
So their concept of oneness is the monotheism of God, the existence of one God. What is pantheism? Pantheism defines God from the material world.
Okay.
So God exists in natural things, not in concepts, not in material concepts.
So there are religions based on this?
Most religions start from this concept, yes.
Okay. So like some people say the universe has chosen a path for you.
God, universe.
Yes, so that's pantheism.
Yes.
I see what you mean. Yes, yes.
And if I can finish my thesis. So by understanding that the natural things that are natural are divine, they play they have a role in the cosmic scheme of things. They have a role in existence. And during the birth of a person, there are the stars that are present cast an effect on our daily lives, but also cast an effect on the birth of a soul, because this is like a cosmic event. Okay, so is it important? Maybe yes, because it's only 1% of the great journey of discovering yourself. And the birth chart is not the same thing as that's why I precise and put birth chart.
Okay.
Because the most of the modern astrology is simply based on
yes,
sorry to say this, but silly concepts, you know. Cliches and pep talks and you know. But the birth chart is not simply, you're not just one sign, you know. There is the lunar sign, the ascendant sign, the Venus sign. What is the Venus sign? Venus symbolizes love, you know. It's not the god of love, but it holds the aspect of love, metaphysically, of course. So the positioning of the planets that reflects Venus at that time, for example, if you have, I personally have a Gemini in Venus.
You have what?
Gemini in Venus.
Okay.
So when it comes to love, I act as a Gemini, two faces, attracted to intellectual stimulations, you know, very, very talkative.
Yeah.
This is in my romantic relationships.
Yes. So when it comes to the relationship between the metaphysical world and the physical world, as someone who studies like the effect, do you like, is it correct what I'm saying, that you try to study the effect of the physical world on
of the metaphysical world, the natural world, on ourselves as a humans?
I see.
Because
so
this is a research in the field of domain that is called humanities.
Yes.
It's about the human.
So how do you feel knowing that, like, for example, like, you think that the position of Venus is going to somehow affect, when you were born, is going to somehow affect how you're going to behave as a lover?
Not 100%, because there are childhood trauma.
But a little bit, just like genes, for example.
Yes.
Genes are going to affect how you're going to behave as a human being, as a friend, as like a lover, as a husband, etc. But not completely. Yes. So the same way the position. So how do you feel knowing, like, where you live? Like, for example, this fascinates me because I am a huge fan of scholars like Al-Kindi.
Interesting.
Yes. So have you heard of him?
Yes.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, I had to base myself on Ibn Arabi on this one. So
on
Ibn Arabi.
I never heard of him. Was he before? Did he come before?
Before
Al-Kindi?
Yes.
Oh, I thought Al-Kindi was the one who was.
Actually, there are countless of Islamic scholars that introduced astrology to the world, and they didn't see it as planets. No, they didn't see it as signs. They saw it as something that is relevant to an individual.
Yeah.
Because the birth chart is absolutely huge, you know.
Yes, yes. So, so Al-Kindi, what he said that there are rays that come from other planets, other stars. So sometimes, like when like if something happens here on Earth, it is affected by rays that come from stars.
Slightly, yes.
Yes. So this is what he was proposing as an explanation on why astrology or why the science of
divinations
works. And yeah, and my the thing that I like, Al-Kindi lived in the year about 900, like the 10th or 11th century, right? But you live as like a spiritual or intellectual descendant of Al-Kindi and people like him, or Ibn Arabi. You live in the modern era. So we live in a world where we have already we aren't only able to know where Venus was when you were born, we also know where it is now, and we know when it's going to be at any point in time in the future.
Yes.
So we so much know this in detail and in precision that we were able to send multiple probes to explore Venus. So we had even photos from the surface of Venus. So how do you feel about this, like in relationship to what you are studying here?
How do I feel?
Yeah, how do you feel about like you live in a world where Venus is, it's like we know so much about it. We know the weather of Venus, for example.
So by saying pantheism, by saying oneness, it's actually a process rather than a concept. Is acknowledging that we as humans are part of the divine worlds cast on the material world. So this makes us not anymore not inferior nor superior to any other, because we have the same soul, and then our ego is built up by external influences, you know. But in the core, in our inner world, we have the same soul, you know. I mean, this is seen from an Islamist point of view and any other point of view. It puts people in one accordance rather than a social classes, because this is conceptual, it's not divine. Is it now modernly cast? Yes, because people in the past in metaphysics used to talk about this connectedness that connects us with each other, and now we have it available in our phones, the internet. So it puts you in like the fourth density of consciousness, where we are all connected, where you can process a feeling through a text. Yes. This is from a metaphysical approach, and quite relevant to the modern scientific discoveries and cosmological analysis of the planets. Yes, the world is in advancement, and pantheism can be used as a tool to approach things in a modern way.
Yeah. But how does this extra knowledge that you have, like Al-Kindi, he was not only someone who would try to explain the relevancy of the positions of planets in our lives, but he was also an astronomer, and he was a physician, and he was a physicist as well, and he was a mathematician, etc. So he was aware, for example, that the Earth is round. He wasn't sure that the Earth went around the Sun or the Sun went around the Earth. That was very difficult to deduce because we didn't have really precise observations. But he was like aware of the latest scientific facts or scientific discoveries at the time, as much as I'm sure you are, as a lot of people like
inductively. Yes. This is called inductive reasoning. Inductive, based on the intuition, based on your subjective feeling, not just emotionally, But the intuition, and I talked about the intuition in the first chapter.
Wait, what is an inductive feeling? You're talking
like
about
not the
what?
opposite of deductive reasoning. It's not a reasoning based on research and concrete facts. It is a reasoning based on your intuition. What is your intuition? It is the compilation of your birth chart, your philosophy, your external influences, anything that makes you a human. So this is the inductive reasoning. And in order for the reasoning to occur, there must be a connectedness from your soul to the divine and natural world, so that you can perceive the material world from a spiritual approach that is relevant to your inductive reasoning. For example, Edgar Allan Poe had emphasized on inductive reasoning. And if we are to read Eureka, we'll find that he prophesied the Big Bang theory, prophesied a lot of theory, and he even reached conclusion of time travels and the fourth dimension. How did he do that? Through guessing.
Who did that? You're talking
Edgar Allan Poe, in his book Eureka,
okay.
his last book.
So I'm not acquainted with him. What era did he live?
The Victorian era, but in America. So
okay. So late 19th century.
1846.
Okay. And what did he deduce on his book?
Eureka, it was his last book.
Okay.
He wrote it before he died. Then
right.
He said that now he can rest in peace knowing that he had written this book. Einstein later called it as a spiritual Bible, and he followed most of the reasoning that he introduced in that book.
Okay, could you tell me about some of the reasoning that was in that book?
In Eureka?
In Eureka, yes.
So he talked about the creation of the universe, the origins, pretty much what I talked about, because I was very inspired from my thesis. And my thesis was about three tales, but it was mostly using the perspective of Eureka. So I was analyzing the content of these tales and comparing it to the knowledge that he directly displayed in Eureka. How did he display this knowledge, and what is this knowledge about?
He displayed the knowledge or something that he supposed was true?
He displayed a knowledge poetically. Why did he display it poetically? Because he believed that humans are supposed to feel rather than think. Okay. That is, the book starts with, to the few who love me and whom I love, to those who feel rather than those who think, to those who put faith in their dreams as the only realities. These are merely alternative realities. So he brings up a knowledge, alternative realities, alternative universes, through a poetic language, because he talks personally with the person, rather than using a academical approach of 6,000 quotations and 25,000 words.
You're aware of Jordan Peterson?
Huh?
You're aware of Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
I heard him say on the podcast that that when you're not sure of what is real, focus on the pain.
No.
Like he said, you can't argue with pain. Pain is real.
Yes.
Like, do you feel pain here? That means this is where you are. Like I don't know how to explain to you.
Well,
but
it's a masculine perspective inspired from Stoicism and Buddhism. Yes, there is suffering in this world. Buddhists believe that we are to break this cycle of suffering. Stoics believe we are to embrace this suffering. Algerians believe that suffering is what builds a man, makes it stronger. Coming back to my first words on this podcast, I know that it is harsh to live in Algeria because there is a lot of suffering, but this suffering will make you stronger in order to face the abroad world.
Yeah, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah, but pain is pain.
Pain is pain, yeah.
Like you can't
tell someone see it subjectively.
No, exactly. This is what I'm saying. Like you can't, while you're in pain, like maybe a posteriori, you could be like, I'm glad I was in pain.
Exactly.
But while you are in pain, like you can't argue it away.
Mm-hmm. Because you have to feel it that way. You have to go through it and you have to own it and come up, pick yourself up. This is what humans do.
Yeah. So one day, the worst pain that I've ever felt was a shot of penicillin.
Really?
Yes.
I thought we were talking about emotional pain, not like physical pain.
Emotional pain could be translated into physical pain. Like, for example, a heartbreak.
Yes.
So there have been scientific studies on people who are going through severe heartbreaks. And what they found out is that the pain is real. Like, there's actual physical pain. The body was responding as if there was some kind of injury there. See what I mean? So pain is here. So when you say that there are multiple realities and each is as relevant or as real as this reality where we are here, you and me talking.
To be honest, I'm not an advocate of this theory. I don't know much about it.
What do you believe? How do you perceive things? Like, I'm more interested in you.
Poetically, I perceive things as a poet, and poetry helps you build an inductive reasoning. Because, for example, my thesis was a hard work of 6,000 quotations and a lot of writing. And then on the last page, I just went to summarize it in one poem of 1 page.
I see.
I see things as a poet. I see beauty and I see the ephemeral beyond things. Of course, I have a job as a researcher. I write for an online platform. I separate those from the poet.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is very relevant to our time because, for example, we live in a world. Well, it's not really. It doesn't happen here in Algeria, but for example, if you go to America, and somebody says, like, a man in the body of a man claims that he is a woman, or that he believes that he is a woman, you have to believe him and you have to act with him as if he is a woman. Otherwise, that you could be punished. But in Canada, you could be punished by law. Like, for example, if I say to you that I'm a woman and you have to refer to me as her, and you don't refer to me as her, I could actually press charges against you. So this is
absurd.
Well, they wouldn't call it absurd, but what the way they see it is, there's a reality and there is my reality, and my reality is as relevant as this reality, and I don't have to cope with the reality that is imposed by like on me. So I think studying this would be very very interesting. And when you talk about juicy things in poetry, you remind me of another scholar whom I appreciate very much, who is called Paul Dirac. He was a British man, and he did groundbreaking work on quantum mechanics. And the thing about him, he had like an issue, a social thing, where, for example, he would be teaching in class, and one of the students would be like, "Hey, I don't understand," and Paul would stand there and wait for like 30 seconds, and then he would continue on with his lecture. And then again, the student stands up again, raises his hand, and says, "Sir, please, I don't understand." And Paul Dirac would wait again for 30 seconds and then continue with his lecture. And then the student gets frustrated and he says, "Please, could you explain to me?" Sorry. And Paul would say, "Why didn't you say that earlier?" Like, Paul doesn't understand les sous-entendus. Like, to him, if you want to say something, you have to say it precisely. Okay. And he never understands something that is not precisely written in what is spoken to him or in what he is reading. So you can imagine the trouble he's had with poetry.
Oh.
Yeah. So actually, I could get you a quote about Paul Dirac, a very, very famous quote of Paul Dirac and poetry. So he said, "In science, one tries to tell people in such a way as to be understood by everyone, something that no one ever knew before. But in poetry, it's the exact opposite. Like what he's saying that in poetry, you're talking about something that everybody understands and that everybody like lives, and like it's real for everybody. Like you're not gonna tell someone something new, but you say it in the most complicated and most obscure way possible. Like I read some of your poems, and I'm sure that your poems are gonna mean a lot to some people, and they're gonna mean different things to different people.
It's supposed to be subjective, yes.
Yes, it is supposed to be subjective, but I'm not sure I understand exactly what you were going through, or what you meant, or what this poem was about. So before this podcast, I had Aniss Hiyuni, and I read some of her poems, and I was like, hey, this poem is about prostitution, and she was like, no, she's about artists. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, like like it's funny to me. I'm not a poet, but it's funny to me how poetry works.
Well, poetry takes a lot of work, to complete a poem. It doesn't happen spontaneously.
Yeah.
Most of the advocates of poetry just throw a bunch of words and call it poetry. It's not that you have to study the effect of the letters, the effect of the rhymes. It's actually very, very logical. And 50% metaphysical, because you are applying feelings.
Yes.
So in a stanza, for example, okay, let's go to the chapter of the soul, because we are talking about poetry. I am a duality and one with the all. How do you see this?
So I am a duality and
one with the all.
With
the all. So
I am a
in
duality
this
and
just
one
lines,
with the all.
there is duality, which is relevant to Carl Jung's concept of animus and anima. There is also an influence of Taoist duality, the Yikang, Yin-Yang, and one with the all. So there is not only oneness, but pantheism as well. So there is a feeling of belongingness in the metaphysical world. This is just one line.
Okay.
This is how poetry works. You put in a huge amount of informations. That's how I succeeded into translating my thesis into one poem. You put a huge amount of informations, doctrines, philosophies, emotions, in the shortest way possible.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I have some experience with that. Like sometimes you could like tell a story that is very long, or you could just summarize it in one poem, and the person reading the poem would actually understand and experience the story in
his own subjective way, in his own state of mind, not to feel exactly the same thing, but to feel. This is why we put a lot of informations within one line, so that the reader will attract the informations that he needs to hear,
So, how do you recognize, like Aniss, how does he recognize that this is actual poetry, not just a bunch of words thrown together and then edited in a library? Like, I'm sure...
It's my daily struggle.
Yeah. Like, as a photographer, a lot of the times I see a photo and I'm like, this is just a painting.
Well, here is a trick in order not to complicate things. You know Serge Gainsbourg?
No.
He's a French singer, excellent one. He said, si tes parents aiment ton travail, c'est vraiment de la merde.
Si tu n'aimes pas ton travail, c'est de la merde.
Si tes parents aiment ton travail,
si tu n'es pas...
Si tes parents, if your parents likes your work, it means it's a bad work,
Okay, so is it just about
No, it's not just about the parents, but it's about the crowd, because I've met a lot of great poets who write even better than me, but they write for themselves, it's their own words. They're not looking for social merit. They're not looking to be published whatsoever. They just write that because that's who they are,
Yeah.
And these poets, I've met them in the English and French department. So they studied. They didn't study the language, but they studied about the language. They know about phonetics, the science of hearings. They know about linguistics. And they're not looking for a social merit. Those who went to get published, They just want to share a message of beauty, they just want to bring comfort to people. This is what I've been trying to do, to bring comfort to people by displaying them the alternative, whether it's in divinity or in love or in rascality, life in the streets, simply to show that there is an alternative and to counter conformity. But if you see that a poem is very self-absorbed, that talks a lot about that person, how he feels, then it's not a poem at all. It's simply a Wattpad fiction, and a tool to gain more social merit and social image, because a real poet is rarely accepted, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the real poets that I met,
Yeah, I see. Yeah. A lot of poets actually die before they are appreciated.
Like William Blake, they die poor.
Yeah.
It's
So one way I was able to, so the one definition that I found about poetry is
le langage des ressentis.
It's what the definition that I really liked was a sentence that means more than its literal sense.
Yes.
Like, for example, so one of my favorite poems is from a song of Pink Floyd. They say
they are great in poetry. Floyd. They have a great poetry. It's surrealistic.
It's Roger Waters. He's the only poet here. The others don't do poetry. But Roger Waters used to do poetry. He wrote the albums Dark Side of the Moon, Not a Brick in the Wall, Wish You Were Here.
Yes.
He wrote these lyrics, and in the song Wish You Were Here, he wrote, Did I get you to trade your heroes for? Wait.
You know what? Let's analyze this. Not academically, but poetically.
Let's do that.
I was thinking about Comfortably Numb because I've seen a scene recently in the movie The Departed. Don't know if you know.
Okay. With DiCaprio and Matt Damon.
And there was just a poetry that just spoke to me.
So we do Comfortably Numb or Wish You Were Here?
I'll let you choose. Yeah.
I'd rather Wish You Were Here.
Okay.
Wish You Were Here lyrics. So we've got
and disciplinary remains.
No. Before this is like words that you can hear on the radio. But it starts with so you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain. Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail, a smile from a veil? Do you think you can tell?
He's actually tackling duality, because it's Taoism is a natural philosophy. It's not just relevant to China. Everyone knows about this, that there is a duality in the world. And in this passage, he is asking, is there a duality between us? Are we separated? Am I the heaven and you're the hell? Are you the heaven and am I the hell? Blue skies from pain. Yeah,
Wait. Before we move on. So you think you can tell heaven from hell? So the way I understand this first verse is, I'm pretty sure. Well, first of all, a lot of people can't really tell heaven from hell. Like sometimes, like a person could maybe spend a lot of money on safety and on security, and they don't realize that they're building their own prison cell, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So they think they're buying heaven, but in fact they are buying their own hell.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And these people, a lot of the times, they end up in bad depressive situations, yes, and bad, really, really bad mental health, and they end up committing suicide.
Heaven and hell as the material world and the spiritual world. We can see it like that, because introducing a strong duality, heaven and hell, it can be subjective, it can be relevant to any situation,
Mm-hmm. So how is heaven and hell?
I see it in this poem, I see it as a romantic notion, but again, poetry is subjective, so it can be applied to anything. I
think there's a difference between our two analyses in terms of I try to see this as an analogy
Okay.
to real life matters. Like, for example, have you seen Game of Thrones?
Not fully, no.
Have you seen the first season?
Yes.
So the first season, you see the daughter of Stark, like the
Which one of
red-haired
them?
one.
The redhead.
Yes,
Okay.
she was. She really wanted to marry Joffrey.
Uh-huh.
I think he's called Joffrey. But like, go to the south and marry the prince there
Okay.
and live with them and maybe someday become a queen, etc. And her wish was granted, and she
Mhm.
went there. And then it turned out she actually went to hell.
Okay.
See what I mean? Like, turned out.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
I get your point.
Yes.
Yes.
See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, this is an analogy, but you see it very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really understand how you see it.
Okay. So, coming back to the academical field,
Okay.
there are many theories in order to approach a text. You know.
Mhm.
So there is like a reader-writer approach,
Yeah.
Jungian approach, Freudian
You don't mind
approach.
I get some gases?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, continue.
Okay.
You can look at me.
So there is Freudian approach, pantheistic approach. All approaches can be applied. And for the literary theories module, I had Lilia Zaneji, who wrote the preface of this book, as a teacher. And she went on to bring many other approaches, to introduce us to other approaches. By approach, I mean a theory. It's like a glasses that you put in order to read the text to come up with something.
So you put glasses before reading?
I put a dualistic theory.
Okay.
I used the dualistic theory. And you used a more of a fictional theory related to a movie. I actually forgot how it is called, this theory, but it exists, what you just did right now.
I see. So Blue Skies from Pain, I guess it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail? Right.
You think you can? Yes. Yeah.
So I think this is emphasizing the way I see it is it emphasizes the meaning. Like, is what you have built for yourself, is it really what you want, what you need?
Exactly. Yes.
Or is it like, see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
A smile from a veil. This is easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people smile and it's a real smile, but sometimes it's just a veil.
Okay. Yes.
Like, most of the time people, when they smile, they don't give you like an honest smile. They smile because
this
it's
reminds
socially...
me of a quote. Within a lot of happiness displayed is a lot of darkness hushed. Within a lot of darkness displayed is a lot of divinity hushed.
Yes.
So coming back to duality, when you see a person smiling, it means he is in pain inside. When you see a person
But not
grunting,
necessarily.
huh?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. It's just
Yeah.
a quote. You know,
Okay,
I'm
okay.
analyzing the quote, and it says that when you see a dark person, for example, Edgar Allan Poe, he was seen as a dark romantic. But actually, he believed that this dark aspects, this destructiveness, is all part of a natural process.
I see.
You know, and he just loved it. He just called it divine. Everything is divine. That is divine. That was his own perspective. But coming back to Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was the leader of the poets at that time, he used to talk about nature, about divine things, only to possess many slaves at his household, you know.
I see.
And Edgar Allan Poe went against slavery. So just a simile between what this extract is actually projecting, you know. Do you think you can tell heaven from hell? Like, can you know that these two comply each other? Good and evil braided be?
So would there be a heaven without hell?
I don't think so. It would be boring.
Yeah. So you have to go through hell to get to heaven.
Yes.
This is exactly
this
what.
is very wise.
Yeah, this is exactly what Jordan Peterson was saying. Like, you want to get to heaven, go through hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, did they get you to? Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts, hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze, cold comfort for change? Right. So they did you cold comfort for change. Did you exchange a walk on a part in the war for a leading role in a cage. So this goes full circle to back to
I'm having
what you were
goosebumps. This
saying
is like
about
some great poetry.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
yeah. So do you prefer this now to 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 comfortably numb?
They're all great.
Yeah.
All poetry speaks to me.
So my favorite part is, did you exchange a walk on a part in a war for a leading role in a cage? So a walk in a part, like when you have a movie, sometimes there are scenes where people like walk in the background. Like those are actors that are paid to just walk in the background. They're not relevant to the movie. They're not important. They're just here to have like
To add up to the setting.
Yes, they're just here for technicalities. So Leonardo DiCaprio does the leading role, right? So which do you choose? A walk on a part in the war,
Okay.
or a leading role in a cage?
Okay.
So what do you choose? See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that are you ready to just be one of the millions who died, sacrificing their souls for their country, and they're not gonna be remembered? Like they say that almost 2 million people died in the War of Liberation to just liberate Algeria. Most of these names aren't remembered. Nobody's gonna write down 2 million names. See what I mean? So most of these people just had a walk on a part in a war. Like at the end of the movie, you're not gonna even see their names in the credit, in the post credit.
Okay.
So other people, so the way I see it is الحركة, other people decided to have a leading role. So have you seen the photo تاع الحركي who is like given the honors by some French military people?
No.
Like he's an Algerian, and
But I've met one of them in France. Yeah.
like داروا له des médailles وكذا وقالوا له يعطيك الصحة etc. But like you could see his misery.
Exactly.
Like these people are they're not gonna look up to you. They're not gonna see you as like really good. This is just politics.
They won't see you as a French person, neither.
That also yeah. So he's having the leading role, but in a cage. So this is how I see it.
Exactly.
Like,
I can't see it of a better way. I'd go very metaphysical, but I'd rather keep this analysis.
Yeah. And I think this is what Roger Waters was trying to. Yeah,
makes sense.
You know the story between Roger Waters and Pink Floyd and.
No, I haven't. To be honest,
it's very interesting because see this great poetry that he wrote. At the same time, so he was writing the lyrics, and Roger Waters was a bassist. So he was doing good bass work. So. Normal stuff for
actually
for
there is
like
a juxtaposition, you know, when you put like heaven, hell, terms like that counters each other, heroes, ghosts. This is a juxtaposition, so it's used repeatedly to cast an effect.
Yes.
What is the effect? Can you help me with that?
To cast an effect.
Actually, all poetry, according to the theory of Edgar Allan Poe, all poetry is like an excessive amount of informations, feelings, and stuff, only to cast one effect on the reader. So I see a lot of emphasis.
So the first I'm gonna say paragraph, but the first maybe verse. So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain, etc.
So this is questioning the conceptualization of that person.
Yeah, the effect that is trying to project is
the other realm.
Question yourself: is this really what you want? Like doubt is the effect that it's trying to.
Yes.
The second paragraph, I'm gonna call it paragraph. I don't care. Is trying to cast the effect of guilt, to make the guilty people feel guilty and feel like they didn't gain anything from what they from what they gave.
feel like he's talking to the reader, not just a person. He's talking to the reader, and he is shattering his perception of reality. That's why he's using an excessive amount of juxtaposition and metaphors. He's actually shattering your reality, your perspective of reality, only to build up for something more, only to prepare him for something more. How I wish you were here. See, we're just two souls swimming in a fishbowl. He's actually shattering the ego, the individual identity, only to call you just one soul swimming in a bowl, just like that.
Yeah. Running over the same old ground.
Huh?
Running over the same old ground.
Mm-hmm.
What have we found? The same old fears. Wish you were here.
Yeah. He's actually calling you to join his state of mind. You know,
Yeah.
he's in the deep level of transcendence. And of course, it is very well known that Pink Floyd singers used LSD and other ecstasies and stuff.
Yeah, it's
So
one
they
of
reach,
them. So what happened to one of them?
they reach very high levels of inspiration.
Do you know what happened to one of them?
No.
Sid Barrett.
Huh?
Sid Barrett, actually the founder of Pink Floyd and the guy responsible for their early success.
Mm-hmm.
He did too much acid and he went crazy.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, but that's not.
I talked about psychedelics in this book.
Yeah.
It was more of a disclaimer rather than a guide.
What was? Could you tell me about the disclaimer, or do I have to read the book?
Just like what you said, you don't have to read it.
So what part of what I said?
You can go crazy. That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Crazy how? By losing all perception of reality, thinking that it's all ephemeral, you know.
Yes.
That's not what metaphysics teaches us. It
Okay.
emphasizes that the spiritual world is in the material world.
Yes.
You know? So we need, even though these things are not divine, the divinity is within us. We use them, you know. We put the divinity within them.
I see, yeah. So you wrote about the duality, reincarnation, densities of consciousness, love as the universal law. So these are like there are
Metaphysical topics.
well, there is vocabulary that is really used a lot in science. For example, duality is used in science, in quantum mechanics.
Oh.
Yes. Density, like density of matter.
Yeah.
How much matter
Same
you
thing.
have in one volume.
It's almost the same.
There's also universal law, which is something that Einstein and many other physicists were trying to are still trying to understand, like a law that explains everything at once. Because we're at
theory of everything. I've heard
Yeah.
about it.
There's also multiverse, which is something
Interesting.
abstracted from science, the theory of the multiverse. Stoicism, occultism, yes, numerology, or dark or bright
I
reality.
enjoyed writing about numerology
Really?
because when I started the book, I reached the chapter of numerology and I just didn't know much about it. I mean, I know I had a vague information.
Did you
about
try?
it.
Did you do the square thing with the 9 squares and they had to add up, etc.?
I actually focused more on Fibonacci spiral, and there is even an illustration of it in the book.
Okay. So 22. Why did you enjoy it? This
Because
is
I had to make-
le nombre d'or,
Yeah, exactly. The golden ratio
the golden ratio.
and the P number.
Yes.
Actually, saw that when I was walking, I saw the P number, and I remember it from the book. Yeah. So why did I enjoy writing about numerology chapter? Because I was having a writer's block, and a friend of mine just called me at morning. She said that she is offering books. She is just getting rid of her books. Would you like 1, 2, or 3? And I said, yeah, I'll just come around and see what you have. And I went in. I found a book on numerology.
I see.
So for me, subjectively, it was some sort of a sign for me to carry on writing because I was going to give up.
Yeah, I see. So last question that I'm gonna have for you is, what gets you up in the morning and do this work? I'm sure it's not money. You're not getting rich out of this.
There are
So
some tricks,
why-
but no.
So what compels you to do so much hard work and so much, like, so
well,
much.
first of all, I
Yeah.
find myself in writing.
Mhm.
I become what I truly am, and I don't take it as a social title. I take it more of a religion, as a dedication, you know.
I see.
I find it passionate, and it fills me with new informations. You know, I feel like I belong. Second of all, I've never sought results. Sons of Algiers was widely sold. Sins of Algiers, slightly. From Psychedelia with Love, it was spread online. But when I was writing these books, I've never expected any material result, and I talked about that in The Flower of Aniss. Instead, what did I receive? My skills became enhanced, and I gained more experience. And also, sometimes I receive messages from readers that I did not expect, that send me a message at a time that perhaps I was feeling down, and they tell me that I've read Sins of Algiers, I understood what you were trying to project, and I've seen it very helpful in my growth. So it's for these small instances of gratifications, you know, that I do these things.
I see. Yeah. Actually, one last thing I would like to tell you about is I played recently a video game that is based on everything you've been talking about. The video game is called Persona.
Wow.
And I encourage you to go check it out on the internet. You need a PlayStation to play it.
Okay. Is it available on computer?
No, it's not. You need a PlayStation to play it, but it's one of the best storytelling that I've experienced on video games. And the premise of the story is that so these two high schoolers get in this high school, and then they find a teacher that is loved by everybody, and that is supported by all the other parties, like the manager really supports this teacher, etc. It's like the most important and the most popular teacher there. At the same time, and he is the most popular teacher there because he's the leader of the volleyball team.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why that school is making money, and the reason why that school is like famous in the area, is because they have a very competitive volleyball team.
Okay.
See what I mean? So the teacher there, that teacher is very, very important to the school. Meanwhile, what they realized, they realized that he was actually a bully. Mm-hmm. So he would bully students or pupils while he would be training them. He was trying to date one of the high schoolers there, which is completely
It reminds
immoral.
me of Life is Strange. I don't know if you know that game.
Yeah. I've played it, yes. Something like Life is Strange is about time travel, right?
Something like that.
This is something else. This is about one day they went to school, and instead of the school, they found a castle.
Okay.
And when they got into the castle, they found that there were subjects who are being punished, and the king of the castle is actually that teacher. So yes, so at some point the teacher, the king had like حكمهم, and he was like, "What are you doing in my castle? I'm gonna punish you to death." And what happened is that one of them, persona خرجت منه, and he was able to defend himself against the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did that in this metaphysical world, when he met the teacher again, he realized that teacher lost a lot of his confidence. So what they decided to do, at some point the teacher had actual he was like, either you go out with me in هذيك high schooler, or I'm gonna مش عارف أنا أدي لك عفسة عيانة.
It reminds me of some teacher of my department.
Yes, we had a lot of them like that. So وش داروا, they returned to the metaphysical world, and they actually had a fight with him, and they beat him, but instead of killing him, what they did is they stole his treasure. His treasure was like médaille de bronze, ou la médaille d'argent, ou la les Jeux Olympiques. So it's like a big deal, ou la médaille d'or, parce que ربح médaille d'or les Jeux Olympiques. So they stole it from him, وقالوا له في the physical world, قالوا له, you're not gonna act like that again, or we're gonna come back to you and we're gonna kill you. So when they returned to the real world, صابوه باللي he held a press conference هكا inside the school. قال لهم voilà, I was hitting children, I was sexually harassing students. There was one student who attempted suicide because he was bullying her, etc., etc. So by intimidating him in the metaphysical world, they were able to change his persona or change his personality or make him apologize in the physical world. So there was like a complete change.
I understand.
Yes. It's a Japanese video game.
Even better. يقيسوها لي جابوني.
Yes, راحوا بعيد في التخمين. Like really, they went far. The advantage is about this. They met an artist. It turns out he would get students and شغل يعلمهم art. When the student like gets يخرج a great artwork, يقول له اسمع، يقول له don't publish it and I publish it on my name. بعدين he gives him threats and stuff, etc. Actually عنده face on them, who intimidates them. He became famous out of the words of other people. So again, they went to his house and they found a museum there instead of a house. So as we were saying, a cage could become something else. A school, as far as that teacher was concerned, the school is his castle and he was the king. So,
perfect.
Yes.
I love this.
Anything you would like to add?
Yes, actually. I'm planning an event on the 10th of October.
Yeah.
Informations will be displayed on my Instagram account. The sales money for the Flower of Aniss will go for charity, an association who will amass the money and buy more books in order to distribute them to orphans of SOS Dararia.
Amazing.
So it's not my money that I put on the printing. It's a contribution from several persons, mostly ones from Canada, Montreal, Algerians, who wants to support literature in this country.
Yeah.
So yeah, if people would like to contribute, I welcome them.
Could you tell me more about the association or the charity?
I'll get the name. Just check a second. Yeah, so Retoract Alger.
Okay.
It's based in Algiers.
All right. Amazing. Thank you so much, Aniss, for coming. This was an enlightening podcast for me.
Yeah, same.
I'm sure for a lot of other people as well. And come again anytime.
Thank you very much.
أروح عزوج تاع الصباح نفتح لك الاستوديو. No problem. Thank you so much and next time.